let's pick up on all the updates. Let's go straight where we left off. Okay, so we're assuming a certain amount of basic knowledge about what happened during yesterday's stream and what happened with the assassination. But in case you do not know, and you are just turning on the computer, you're coming back from a camping trip, you're logging on to the internet for the first time in a bit, you were on a desert island and you've just been recovered, you know, something from just back from 2011 when Charlie Kirk first went on Fox at the age of 17 to be a Tea Party advocate. Wherever you're coming from, the basics are Charlie Kirk was doing a not an ask me anything, a change my mind style event, right? They didn't call it change my mind, but it was basically like a change my mind. And while having people step up to the microphone and ask some questions in a crowd about 3,000 people, Charlie Kirk was shot in the neck, which essentially killed him instantly, not in the idea that he was immediately diagnosed as dead on the scene, but that his eyes rolled in the back of his head, that the shot was so gruesome, and the way blood poured out as if somebody popped the cork on a wine bottle, or on a more not a wine bottle, more wine barrel, as it would like pour out, so to speak. That it was pretty clear that he didn't have good odds, and I thought that it was gonna be bad for Charlie, and Charlie did get taken to a hospital. There he died. The shooter on the scene was originally being reported, oh, it's this old man. It's not this old man. Oh, they have a new person in custody. They don't have a new person. That person's released. Now they're on their third suspect, and we're going to get to that third suspect, but the shooter was able to get away. The shooter fired at Mr. Kirk while on a building about 200 yards away. Some people have suggested that this shot from 200 yards away is some professional shot or some amazing shot or something like that. I'm going to be blunt and I'm going to be simple. If you are a 12-year-old little boy, you can make that shot. I will say that again. If you are a 12-year-old little boy and you have enough training, you know, a few weeks training, you can make a shot like that. If you are a hunter from, I don't know, somewhere like Oklahoma or Utah, or somewhere that might have a decent hunting culture, and you know how to hunt for buck, and you know how to take a three-pointer, you're somebody who can probably do it too. So the idea that this had to be a professional, that this had to be some either foreign agent or some sort of actor, I'm not saying that's impossible. I'm just saying that the fact that they were able to hit his neck from 200 yards away, when we don't even know he was aiming for the neck, he could have been aiming for the head, could have been aiming for the chest. And that's the first big major update we're going to get into in a second, is that when talking about the suspect, the words that people are using is he. And we have a picture we're going to go into, but we know now that the suspect and the shooter is believed to be a man that was dressed in all black, even though originally that's not what the reports we were getting. We'll get to that in a second. But first, before anything else, I want to get this out of the way. Steven Crowder dropped an exclusive that their team received an email from an officer at the Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And that in the email, they included screen caps and what Steven Crowder says is evidence that appeals to show messages describing the weapon that was retrieved from the forest, tree and like covered greenery area near the site of the shooting. There has been a rifle recovered. Here is the rifle right here. I took this one from the New York Post for anybody who wants to know the source of the photo. So the man who shot Charlie Kirk in the neck did it with a bolt-action rifle. Now, in this report that Steven Crowder is talking about, it alleges that the bullet casings that were used to fire at Charlie Kirk has cultural messages written on them. And the cultural messages that are specifically mentioned are all cartridges have engraved wording on them expressing transgender and anti-fascist ideology, according to Steven Crowder's exclusive from inside the Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Now, anti-fascist ideology, okay. Transgender ideology, what does that exactly mean? Just like, go trans? Or does that mean something like I support trans ideology. That seems like not something somebody would write on a bullet casing, but I don't really know what they mean by transgender ideology. But once I saw this was reported by Steven Crowder, I was like, okay, well, that's Steven Crowder. Let's wait until some other outlets talk about it. Then I saw the Wall Street Journal talked about it. Then I saw a few other outlets, but the Wall Street Journal probably being the most high profile 3-letter news agency that reported on it, until eventually we got a follow-up from the investigators. And this is what they had to say. According to a preliminary internal report circulating inside the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, federal and local officials recovered ammunition with a rifle that appeared to be engraved with statements, and I quote, expressing transgender and anti-fascist ideology. But a senior law enforcement official with direct knowledge of the investigation cautioned that the report had not been verified by ATF analysts, did not match other summaries of the evidence, and might turn out to have been misread or misinterpreted. In fast-moving investigations, such status reports are not made public because they often contain a mixture of accurate and inaccurate information. So, early on into this investigation, we're less than 24 hours in, the investigators are able to recover the rifle along with these bullet casings. They then start doing an investigation. One of those reports in those investigations that are produced by the ATF, as the FBI, the ATF, and really any federal resources thrown at Utah the government can muster, from everything including entire departments to the Vice President of the United States. One report says that they wrote pro-trans and anti-fascist messages on these bullet casings. But if the ATF is saying not only that it hasn't been verified, not been verified is like, okay, they want to double check and triple check and quadruple check before they release something, besides one agent at the ATF who is either a fan of Steven Crowder or connected to Steven Crowder or whatever, gives him one report that they've seen from their purview of their perspective of the investigation. Like, there's a big gulf between these two things, between when one person can talk rumor and when somebody like the organization of the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearm Agency can talk facts. But the big thing here is did not match other summaries of the evidence. And if that is the case, if what's being reported there is true, then that means that what was being highlighted is a particular narrative of events that doesn't match other investigated, other investigative theories, other papers or reports put forward by investigators. And they chose to choose the one that has pro-trans messaging. Maybe that ends up to be the case. Maybe it doesn't. But if they're saying right now it doesn't match other summaries of the evidence, that seems to leave a lot of question marks outside of what Steven Crowder put out there. And of course, the last thing they wrote, which might turn out to have been misread or misinterpreted, meaning not only that they could have misconstrued and, it's actually, the summary doesn't really match here, but it's also that they could have misconstrued the messages on the bullet casings altogether. Maybe they thought something was pro-trans when the message was actually anti-trans. Who knows? Either way, as of right now, an ideology has still not been determined, and we do not know what motivated the shooter in any way, shape, or form as of this moment. People can speculate. They can speculate that it was a angry lefty mad about certain things that Charlie Kirk has said in the past that were transphobic or mean or gross. Or you could speculate that it was somebody to the right of Charlie who didn't think he was going far enough. You could speculate that this is some type of accelerationist. You could speculate that this is some type of nihilistic terrorist. It could be any other. You could speculate that it's some crazy. Somebody who thinks that by taking out Charlie Kirk, they're able to release the demon from the nether realm of whatever. It could be somebody who's, completely lost it, but knows how to hunt. Either way, as of right now, the only thing we have to go of that's new is this. This is from the FBI, and this was posted on social media so they can get help in tracking down who this is. We are asking for the public's help identifying this person of interest in connection with the fatal shooting of Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University. 1-800, call FBI. Digital media tips. And you can see here pictures of a suspect, not who they know to be the shooter, but a person of interest. So this might be the shooter, and this might just be another person. Right? Just like the last two, suspects that were going around or people of interest ended up not being the case. It could be the case here as well. But if you look here, there's a few things that's interesting. The first thing that's interesting is, number one, this doesn't match earlier descriptions that were being shared around immediately after the shooting. As is pointed out by former deputy FBI director on the Clinton News Network on CNN.
One thing that I think is very inconsistent, and it bothers me, and that is that photo that you're looking at right now. That's the photo of this guy blending in. The description that the FBI put out, the description you just heard on that radio, was a description of someone who was in tactical gear, fully kitted out, it sounded like. Now, granted, he could have hit all that stuff, but that hasn't been found. So I'm not sure that, there's an inconsistency there that could actually come back later at a trial to be what I would call exculpatory material.
So that's the first thing. But I will say, there were reports about the person wearing all black when you looked at footage of what seemed to be the suspect on a roof nearby, roughly 200 meters away from Charlie Kirk, where later police tape would surround that roof, indicating that is where the assassin took the shot that ended his life. You can see their upper body as they skirt around, but you can't really see much else. You can see it's like something poking out, but you can't see much else. The only thing you can make out is that it's black. And so I see some people in chat like, hey, if we're talking about the report of this person being dressed in all black, as we saw with that, what we believe to be the shooter on a rooftop nearby, why is he wearing blue jeans? Well, if he's standing on the rooftop, it would make sense that you see the top of his body and not the lower half, especially if he's going to be laying down and trying to set up for a shot. So either and not to mention, like, dark blue jeans are not exactly like pink or neon or that easily discernible from the rest of the outfit that he's wearing. But this does match. And I would say that something like this is inconspicuous enough that it would not be too difficult to slip in and slip out of a crowd. And if somebody was asked, hey, describe this person, what would you say? Would you, black clothing, jeans, sunglasses, features, there's not really much to say. There's also not really much to see. I will say, though, that investigators did say, the government put out a statement like, oh, we have better footage than we originally had before. The CTV footage we had before was horrible. Now we have better footage. We're going to put his face through some facial identification software. We expect to see results. Then there was no results. And then that's when this photo was eventually published, indicating to me that they didn't get anywhere with the facial identification, that they didn't really have much elsewhere in the investigation that they could go immediately that they think would bear fruit. There might be some stuff that they're staking out here or there, but that they think that now is the time to get the help of the public, is to see if there's anybody who could identify who is this, and that they're posting it online as an indication that they aren't really making that much progress. And they've also put a $100,000 reward on top of it. So now there's also a financial incentive for anybody who wants to go get the man who took out Charlie Kirk. Now, besides that, this is all we have to go on. Again, this is a person of interest. Some people have talked about, looking at this, where is his rifle, if this is the guy who did it. But near the scene, where they found the rifle that was disposed of in the forest, they also found a screwdriver. So what the guy could have done is assembled the gun after disassembling it and putting it in his bag and going to the event and getting on the roof, taking it out, assembling it on the roof before taking the shot, the consequential shot. So I like sneaking a gun into a place like this, fully prepared, put together. Yeah, that's going to be a lot more difficult. Disassembling it piece by piece and keeping it in what looks like a book bag that's on his back right here in this photograph. Well, that would be a little different. That would be substantially easier. And again, there were no metal detectors in this event. As far as I'm aware, there were 6 police officers covering this event of over 3,000 people. So getting that through security in this area that was supposed to be a gun-free zone, but if they're not checking all the bags for guns, that, you know, what does that ultimately mean? So, as people are continuing to scramble, as people continue to look at this group of pixels to see if they can make out a human being that anyone knows, a cousin, a local, you know, shut-in, just anybody, anything they can do, looking at this right here. I've even seen people finding the eBay page of the shirt, of the hoodie he's wearing here, to see if they could contact the seller to see if maybe the seller had a list of people he recently sold to, or addresses, to see if they could go hit those houses. I mean, people are really trying to dig however they can now that this information has been thrown to the public. But it's not just living in a vacuum. This isn't an investigation in a vacuum. The effects of Kirk's assassination are having outward effects on the rest of the political environment. And today, there was a bomb threat made at DNC headquarters in the Capitol. Democratic National Committee headquarters received a potential bomb threat Thursday afternoon. The United States Capitol Police cleared the building just after 4 p.m. and did not report finding any explosive devices. The lockdown has since been lifted and the area is reopened. Any associated road closures were open in the coming hours. The bomb threat was reported at 1:07 p.m., U.S. Capitol Police said. The Metropolitan Police Department Explosive Ordnance Disposal Squad were requested by Capitol Police. They said they checked the building and surrounding area. Nothing was found outside. They checked inside the building out of abundance of caution. So right now it's a bomb threat. Right now it's something that scares a bunch of people in an office and shuts down work for a day and might leave people going home shaken and scared. Next time, maybe it won't be. People forget that during January 6th, there were pipe bombs placed both outside of the DNC, but the RNC as well. There have been a lot of attempted bombings in recent years, both on President Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and a host of other major celebrities, both through the mail and at home residences. Point is, though, that I am very fearful that the situation when it comes to the outgrowths, the waves that this violence creates, is that it's only going to get worse. I'm hoping that isn't the case. I'm hoping that we can temper down rhetoric and everybody calling for war can shut up and people can start to, you know, maybe talk about their political opponents in a way that is realistic, in a way that leaves out the possibility of being misinterpreted for violence. And also, when events like this happen, there's a type of universal condemnation and critique of those who go out there and call for more, or call for the heightening attentions, or try to exploit it. That's what you would expect from political leadership. That's what you expect from the president. That's what you expect from senators. Well, we've gotten reactions, and we're going to go through some. First, I want to show you the one person who has gotten sacked in relation to the reaction to the shooting. This is MSNBC's program. Matthew Dowd.
That's the environment.
Talking in the immediate aftermath of Charlie being shot, and he's talking about who Charlie is and the type of work that he does.
We need the full details of this. We don't know if this was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration, or so we have no idea about this. But following up on what was just said, he's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions. And I think that's the environment we're in, that people just, you can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place.
Matt.
And that's the unfortunate environment we're in.
So the most offensive thing in this to me, because the big thing that people are getting angry at is the second half, which is hateful words lead to hateful actions, which is true. I don't know. In this context, it suggests that it's Charlie Kirk's own words that led to the shooting, when, again, right now we don't know the motive of the shooter at all. If it's an attention seeker, then like Charlie Kirk could have been Madonna, and like it wouldn't have changed anything. Like we really don't know the motivations of the shooter. But it's the first half that actually kind of offends me and offends my intelligence. We don't know if Charlie Kirk was shot by a supporter firing off their gun in celebration. We talked about this yesterday's stream, I saw a shorter clip of this. Now that I've seen the rest of it in context, I can now 100% say with absolute positivity, it is as stupid as I thought it was. The other reaction that I saw some negative response to is this interview that Ilhan Omar did with Mehdi Hassan of Zito,
Burns is an
morally corrupt, bankrupt man, where she's talking about who Charlie Kirk was in the fallout of his death as people start to talk about his legacy. And, some people tell tall tales, some people tell the truth. And Ilhan Omar doesn't like some of the telling of what she thinks is tall tales. And this is classified as the enjoyment of what's happening here. Let me show you this clip from Ilhan Omar. Thank you, TRH, for the primer. I appreciate it.
What I do know for sure is that, Charlie was someone who once said, guns save lives after a school shooting. Charlie was someone who was willing to debate and downplay the death of George Floyd in the hands of Minneapolis police.
I think he called him a scumbag.
Right, have no regard, downplay slavery and what Black people have gone through in this country by saying Juneteenth should never exist. And I think, there are a lot of people who are out there talking about him just wanting to have a civil debate.
Complete rewriting of history.
Yeah, there is nothing more effed up, than to completely pretend that his words and actions have not been recorded and in existence for the last decade or so.
I mean, I see how people in this moment, if you're pained about Kirk's death, you see Ilhan talking about what she thinks is the negative parts of his legacy, and you're going to get angry and think she's getting giddy when she's laughing at not his passing, even though you can interpret, what's in her mind truly, but laughing at how people are talking about Charlie's legacy. I mean, if tomorrow I found out that Scott Ritter had been taken out by an assassin, I'm not going to pretend that he was, not the things that he is. So that would probably be the response Ilhan could give the idea that this had to be them laughing at their political death. In fact, Zito, the publication that actually interviewed them, responded with another clip following up.
It was really mortifying to hear the news, to see the video. All I could think about was his wife, his children. That image is going to live forever.
And so if you want to assume what she believes, you can assume what she believes. If you want to say this is not the time and place to talk about Charlie Kirk's legacy, but I mean, I don't know. When is a time to talk about somebody's legacy than when they pass away? When is the time to talk about Ozzy Osbourne, not to compare Charlie Kirk to Ozzy Osbourne, than when he passes? When do you talk about the impact that a person has than when they pass, especially when it's such a headline grabbing and people are writing his story now about, there's headlines and people are learning about Charlie for the first time. And what they're being told is, civil debate. If someone asked me what Charlie Kirk's legacy was, we could talk about Turning Point USA. We could talk about the fact that he liked to have debates. We could also talk about many of the gross things he said. We can also talk about many of the ignorant things he said. We can also talk about the campaigns that he supported that I think has done material harm to American people. We can talk about that legacy, but you got to give a balanced view of the legacy, or expect it, especially from those who never liked Charlie Kirk. If you want somebody to just praise Charlie Kirk, go
more information.
Listen to his friends.
Kulinski of Secular Talk did a detailed deep dives into a lot of information and speculation. Long vid, but would recommend a watch off stream.
I saw Secular Talk speculating about it being a professional. I saw him saying that, this looks professional. And again, I mean, it's the most professional thing is that they got away, right? That's the most professional thing. Well, if you're talking about the shot, if you're talking about the length, if you're talking how far away they were, if you're talking about where it hit, if you're talking about, none of that is particularly professional. But you also don't necessarily need to be a professional to get away. It could also just be that the people who are responding to you are not that professional. People said that about Luigi too before getting caught. Yeah, and it's like, look at the way he coldly raises his hand and pulls the you mean he shot? You mean he knew how a gun worked? You mean he knew not to point the gun at himself? He knew how to point the gun in that direction. That's where the professionalism comes into play. The professional. He knew not to look down the barrel. This is a real cold-blooded killer. Okay. Where were we? Ah, yes. Let's continue with the reactions. Now, there have been, I would say the most vitriolic lefty reactions have probably been concentrated on TikTok. I've seen some on Blue Sky, but even like the people talking about it like it's a hellscape. But I'm looking over and it's really mostly smaller accounts. The same thing is true about Twitter as well. The vast majority of the big posting in the way that they're describing is happening on TikTok. It's happening in like short form video content. And so when I see people coming out, number one, pointing the finger, blaming people before, again, we know the shooter's motivations, but to come out here and pointing it at their convenient political opponents, you don't know why the shooter did it. And every major Democratic political figure has condemned the shooting, as they do with every political shooting. So, I mean, and definitely when I hear this rhetoric from the worst actors who are adding tension to our system. For example, here is a back and forth from Nancy Mace. Nancy Mace, of course, we probably know her on this program for her extremely stringent opposition to aid to Ukraine and her bombastic meetings in Congress, where she tends to get pretty snappy back and forth with other people on committee boards. Representative Nancy Mace says, "You'll be murdered by a pro-Tiesler person if you speak out against them." She also says she will not be doing any outdoor events anytime soon.
There was an invisible line that was crossed in the last 48 hours when you had the video of the young white girl on the train in Charlotte, the Ukrainian, Irina Zarutska, murdered in cold blood and nobody did anything. And then we have Charlie Kirk 24 hours later. He was so vocal. And the media, you guys in the mainstream media, were attacking Charlie Kirk in the 24 hours before he was murdered, before he was assassinated. And I do think an invisible line was crossed yesterday, and I am deeply concerned for my safety. I just got off.
Okay, can I just, when somebody says, oh, they were attacking Charlie, what were they saying? Say what they were saying. Charlie attacks everyone. That's his thing. You know, why do you think he does, oh, I had 20 v1. He does these debates all the time. His whole thing is to go out there and be like a debate attack dog. When he goes out and he makes speeches about like the degeneracy of the, or like how he attacked George Floyd, or how he attacked he attacks the public images and goes after people and their reputations and does this all the time. Why should he be free of critique? If somebody said something like somebody should do something about Charlie, well, then point that out. But if they're just saying Charlie Kirk, we think he's a bigot, well, welcome to the United States.
Phone with the sergeant at arms. I'm deeply concerned for, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, any elected official across the country. If you are vocal, your life is at risk. And I have to deal with children who think they're going to be murdered at school. I have to deal with employees right now who are afraid to come to work. I am one of the most vocal, you know, you guys in the press call me the most transphobe member of Congress. Turns out that there were transgender, anti-fascist things that were engraved in the ammunition and in the rifle that was apprehended and found.
Again, this is an exclusive from Stephen Crowder from a preliminary report that the ATF themselves said doesn't agree with other variations of reports that they've put out. So, I mean, she is working off of very little here. Might end up being true, might end up not being true. But when the ATF is telling you to hold your horses, hold your horses.
I will not be doing any outdoor events anytime soon. We will not be doing any public events anytime soon until we have a better handle on greater security controls. I have local police right now sitting outside my offices in South Carolina to be a deterrence. I have pro-tranny protesters at my offices protesting every week. I like going outside in the heat and offering them food and water and having a colloquy, having a conversation that is peaceful. I'm not able to do that right now. I'm not even sure I can keep my personally owned vehicle right now because my Attorney General, Alan Wilson, if you're watching.
Oh my God, then resign. Okay, I'll accept like, hey, tensions are high right now. We need to be more careful. So we're going to do less outdoor events. We're going to do more this, more that. I don't know if I can have my own car. All of my staff are terrified to come to work. XYZ, XY. Okay. We get it. You know, it's like, you know, tensions are high right now, but we don't know of any credible threats against Nancy Mace's life. Nancy Mace does not have the, like, I don't even want to say stardom, but like the reputation or, you know, I guess you would say household rep that Charlie Kirk had. He's not doing like endless college tour. Like this is like, it's one thing to say, hey, you know, the tension. Oh, I don't know if I can have my own car. Man, these people would collapse if they were working in the 70s. They would collapse at the amount of political violence that was happening then. That's not to say this is good or to excuse it in any way. Sorry, I'm still sick. That's just to say that, yes, political violence, assassinations. There were also Minnesota legislators assassinated 3 weeks ago. What has changed between then and now that now says you can't have a personal car? Like it's as bad as it was then. It's just now people on the other side are even more pissed. And it's just going to keep on going back and forth as a Democrat gets shot, as a Republican gets shot. And tensions will only keep heightening. But again, like, you can get your own car.
You're a piece of shit. You posted my personally owned vehicle online, plates and all, just a week or two ago. And I'm afraid to even drive my own vehicle at this point. And we'll see. I just got off the phone with Sergeant Arms, and they're providing more security protocols and advice for our office, and we'll be taking this very seriously, and I hope.
Okay, if this is happening, will this also be extended to former politicians that are high profile? For example, as the Biden administration was ending, Biden extended security to Harris, like in order so she would continue to have protection outside of office. Trump ended that. Trump took all of that away. Harris doesn't have like really any Secret Service protection. Is that something that's going to be reversed, or is this something that's only going to be offered to congressional Republicans and, you know, those who are currently in office, but, you know, figures like Nancy Mace? There are a bunch of people outside of office that get regular bomb threats, regular death threats, because they're the politicians people know, so they're the ones that people want to go after. Most people don't know Nancy Mace. Most people know who Hillary Clinton is.
Every elected official across the country, regardless of your politics, I hope that we all will take this seriously because lives are in danger. You'll be murdered by a pro-tranny person if you speak out against them, and that's wrong, and it's got to end, and enough is enough. I'm going to double down on my beliefs. I'm going to double down and be more vigilant than I've ever been because... Again,
the photo that I saw of the shooter, we have no clue if they're trans or not. It's just immediately they're just accepting they're trans. And here's the thing, whether or not they're trans, they want to get it out that they're trans immediately. They have to be trans because it adds to the narrative and it makes it easier to take their rights away. It makes it easier to restrict the Second Amendment for them. It makes it easier to target their healthcare services. It makes it easier to demonize them, and it makes it easier to target them. And if it does all those things, why wait until all the facts are clear? In fact, once all the facts are clear, you might lose the opportunity because maybe the facts don't line up in the way that you want to for your political convenience.
This shit stops now. Enough is enough.
Are you satisfied with the leadership here and how they're taking this seriously?
We'll see. I've made inquiries with the leadership yesterday afternoon. I spoke with the Capitol Police and the Sergeant at Arms this morning, the Capitol Police yesterday. Sergeant at Arms was very good. I literally just got off the phone with them 10 minutes ago. But it's not enough. So we have the new $15 million, I guess it was a plan for August and September. It's only $5,000 a month for those here in Congress who are very vocal and are more well-known than others. $5,000 is not much. I'm not personally rich, so we are taking different safety precautions. I'll start carrying again when I'm back home. And when I'm allowed to carry where it's reciprocal in other states, I will have a firearm on my person all the time, and I will have security. I haven't had to do that in a long time, but this is I mean, if you have a difference of opinion from the left, they want to kill you. That is a fact, and that's the way you all should report it. Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He was murdered for his beliefs, and this is a guy. You guys in the Democrat Party want a national conversation. Charlie Kirk literally had a peaceful national conversation. That is the movement that he created. And he loved it when kids would come to his events and would have differing opinions, and they would peacefully have a debate, not even a debate. I would call it a colloquy. I would call it a conversation that we could have. And he made kids who were Democrats, who were on the left side of the aisle, he made them better debaters because.
Or he tried to humiliate them. Like half the business model was humiliating college kids in front of the country. People who haven't like really completely figured out like what they believe in or like grounded their ideas. Instead of say like college professors. When he did go out there and he debate college professors like he recently did at Cambridge, it didn't do as well.
He was a great orator. He was good with facts. He was educating people from all walks of life, and he was murdered for doing the very thing you Democrats want us on the Republican Party side to do. And I'm done with it. I'm done. It cannot go on anymore, and we've got to be more vigilant than ever. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, so that was Nancy Mace reacting. Here is Representative Derek Van Orden, a Republican from Wisconsin, telling reporters at the Capitol that they're to blame for Charlie Kirk's death. Again, we have no clue why he was shot, but the press did it.
Every single one of you here, you're at fault. Hey, you know what? Knock it off. Knock it off.
Do you believe Republicans are problematic?
You are responsible for that assassination yesterday. You should be ashamed of yourself.
What about the Democratic lawmakers assassinated in Minnesota?
I don't know why Mr. Plantation is like so whiny about this, and he's like putting like I have no clue why he's so particularly. That's what an interesting hat choice. We don't know what happened. We don't know why they did it. We have no clue. All the press. Could you imagine this? A politician advocates for something or does something that has a negative impact. Somebody goes in there. Every politician is at fault. We don't even know if the press is at fault. But even if if a journalist wrote an article that was too hyperbolic, that inspired somebody, we have no clue if we're anywhere near that. But if we are, now it's every single journalist that goes to Capitol Hill. It's all of you. My God, it's so performative. I mean, it's politics, but some things are so performative they just kind of hard to listen to. Here is Representative Clay Higgins. I'm going to use congressional authority and every influence with big tech platforms to mandate immediate bans for life for every post or commenter that belittled the assassination of Charlie Kirk. If they ran their mouth with their smart-ass hatred celebrating the heinous murder of that beautiful young man who dedicated his life to delivering respectful conservative truth in the hearts of liberal archive universities, armed only with a Bible and a microphone and a constitution. He didn't, I don't know I don't think I've ever seen Charlie bust out these things. I mean, I guess he's just saying he believes in these, whatever. Those profiles must come down. So I'm going to lean forward in this fight, demanding that big tech have zero tolerance for violent political hate content. The user be banned from all platforms forever. I am going after their business licenses and permitting. Their businesses will be blacklisted aggressively. They should be kicked from every school, and their driver's licenses should be revoked. I'm basically going to cancel with extreme prejudices these evil, sick animals who celebrated Charlie Kirk's assassination. I'm starting that today. That is all. So, number one, Representative Clay Higgins, if it's a Democrat getting their head bashed in with a hammer, he thinks it's the funniest shit in the world, right? So, him being the one to whine about to belittle Charlie Kirk's assassination is very rich. Project Liberal immediately responded with, that moment you realize the nudist hippie male prostitute LSD guy was the reason your husband didn't make it to your fundraiser. Mind you, this was somebody who wanted to kidnap and torture Nancy Pelosi, but Representative Kay Higgins, his first inclination was, nah, I believe the rumors that he's a homosexual because it makes it easier to just look past his violence. So The hypocrisy, I mean, that's pretty clear. But what's interesting here is not just we're going to ban you from every platform, so that if you get banned from one platform for saying something belittling about Charlie Kirk and his death, but you're going to get banned from every platform, as well as kicked from every school, going after any business licenses and permitting. So if you own a small business, you're not allowed to own a small business and make fun of Charlie Kirk's death. You're not allowed to have a license and make fun of Charlie Kirk's death. And you're not allowed to really participate in education if you made fun of Charlie Kirk's death. This is what you do and what you concentrate on if you have no other solution. If you have no clue how to deal with the heightened political tensions in the country, the increasing instances of political violence, you don't know how to either deal with whether it has to do with mental, whatever caused this shooter, to motivate them to deal with that head on. If you have no idea what you're doing, let's just go ban all the mean things online. That is an approach. That is certainly an approach. Not usually taken by congressmen, but it's an approach. Elizabeth Warren also responded, but her tone was very different than others in the party, seeming to be more firm about the fact that the idea that Democrats need to temper down their rhetoric is ridiculous. Senator Elizabeth Warren on Wednesday rebuked the notion that Democrats are to blame for the death of Charlie Kirk, which numerous conservatives have suggested, and argued that one powerful figure has caused more volatile divisiveness than anyone else. Warren was asked hours after the shooting about this rhetoric. The Massachusetts Democrat, who has spent much of her time in Congress fighting for sensible gun reform, responded bluntly. Oh, please. Right. Why don't you start with the President of the United States, right? And every ugly meme he has posted and every ugly word. Now, I agree. It's impossible not to agree that Donald Trump is somebody who adds political divisive, like where he walks, political tensions rise. Where he goes, Americans get angry at each other. That's something he's very good at doing. And Donald Trump has said some pretty gross things about, going after and bombing women and children in warfare. He said some pretty gross things about other human beings, whether it be about wanting to ban all Muslims from the United States, or how he's talked in the aftermath of certain instances of political violence. For example, out right now when people are asking for Democrats to go lockstep and key, to condemn this, which they should, and I think they should, and I think both people across the spectrum should work to try to decrease the rhetoric. But any suggestion that this is like particularly worse on one side or the other is, it's just silly. Here's one example I have to show. Just a few weeks ago, it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago, there was Minnesota senators assassinated by somebody going to their home trying to target high-profile Democrats all across the state. And they assassinated the Speaker of the Minnesota House, the highest-ranking person in the chamber. Donald Trump was asked in the immediate aftermath if he was going to call the governor, Tim Walz, who ran against him in the last presidential campaign as the vice presidential candidate for of course, Ms. Harris. And he did not respond to it with compassion. Let's see if we can get this clip working, or if it's going to load forever. By the way, this was posted as libs of TikTok as like a fun thing.
Have you called the governor yet, or been able to speak to any of them?
I don't know. I called him. He appointed this guy to a position. I think the governor of Minnesota is so whacked out. I'm not calling him. Why would I call him? I could call him and say, hi, how you doing? The guy doesn't have a clue. He's a mess. So, I could be nice and call him, but why waste time?
So for libs of TikTok, the same libs of TikTok that is currently calling for civil war in the United States, a lack of responsiveness, a lack of response by Trump for the government that is trying to crack down on political assassinations in Minnesota, that's trying to catch the shooter, that's trying to ease tensions and ease calm. His response is, I don't like Tim Walz. He's wacky because he ran against me, so I'm not going to call him. He's a mess. Why should I be nice? You mean do what the president should do after a political assassination? So he chose that moment to go after their character in that way. It'd be one thing if he's like, look, he's wacky and he's a wackadoodle, but we got to do what we got to do. But no, he's like, I'm not going to call him. There's no need to. He doesn't see himself as a representative of the Republic, as the head of state of the country, as somebody who needs to console Minnesotans and console, people from, it was Minnesota. I kept saying Wisconsin, I think. Minnesotans after an assassination like this. Massey says Trump among those who should tone down rhetoric. Thomas Massey, a Republican in the House, has gotten a lot of attention recently for his discharge petition, trying to force a vote on the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. The same discharge petition that, as of today, has 217 out of the 218 signatures needed, meaning that they just need just one more Republican to jump on to their discharge petition to force a vote on the release of the Epstein files. One more Republican. I don't think they're going to get it. But he said, this Republican who's crusading to make sure the Epstein files gets out, he says it's also Trump among those who need to tone down their rhetoric. Representative Thomas Massey said he includes President Trump among those who should tone down their rhetoric in the wake of the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. I mean, there is a lot of rhetoric, and the president himself engages in it. He called it a hostile act to co-sponsor the Epstein resolution, said Massey, who is a leading voice in pushing a motion to force the release of it. I think that's ridiculous rhetoric. It's amusing, he added. It doesn't offend me that he's over the top with the rhetoric, but some people take it literally, and he should probably tone it down himself. It's not just Democrats that see it, it's Republicans that see it. It's just that Thomas Massey is one of the few Republicans who are in a position who can actually speak up, because he's already getting cracked down in response to his Jeffrey Epstein crusade anyway. Another reaction to this has been from no other than Hassan Piker, Twitch's top streaming leftist content creator, with the headline at Politico, "I can't let fear dictate my life." Hassan Piker on the fallout from Charlie Kirk's killing. What is the best case scenario of where we can go from here as a society after Charlie's death? And what is the worst case? Best case is reasonable, comprehensive gun reform in the direction of safety. That sounds insane. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But the worst case is what I'm seeing on Twitter. More and more of Twitter becoming real life, where people are getting increasingly more belligerent, increasingly more angry. They're eventually going to have to be a boiling point, right? There has to be a point where all of that anger and frustration mounts. In the absence of any sort of pressure valve to release that anger, I think people will look for different targets that they have designed as a reason why they feel the way they feel. It can be a litany of different marginalized populations: Black and brown people, undocumented immigrants, trans people, the left, broadly, liberals, broadly. I fear that this is the worst case scenario. People in the decentralized way seeking out vengeance, seeking out some distorted sense of justice in their own minds. And then I think political persecution as well. I mean, Trump just came out and released a video in the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk assassination where he said, we're going to go after the left. We're going to go after everyone that's demonized the right, while also simultaneously saying, we're going to do this in the spirit of free speech. What is interesting, because I feel like he's spelling out a clear-cut violation of constitutional protections. What do you think it said about Charlie Kirk that he thought debate was one of the ways to release that pressure valve? I don't think he was ever debating for the purpose of finding truth from a position of intellectual curiosity. I think a lot of people say that. Debates are only productive in the sense that it can test your opinions against your interlocutor's opinions. And it's good, it's galvanizing. I've always said that 40% of the audience on either side have already made up their minds and that they're not going to change. But there's a 20% in the margins that could swing in either direction. And it's for that 20% in the middle that you entertain the intellectual sparring. For Charlie, I think format was more so to just humiliate his ideological opponents. And he was very successful at doing propaganda of this sort by going to college campuses and listening to what people had to say and then giving them the right-wing talking points on the matter, getting a couple dunks in the process. That's a big part of debate culture. Having said that, it can still be productive. There are still people who can have their minds change in that process where they go, wow, my worldview that I took for granted is maybe seemingly not so smart. There is some productivity that you can derive out of debates, which is why I was intending doing it with Charlie Kirk. I mean, he's right about the reaction to this about the left and the fact that this could be used to go after people, whether it just be a convenient political opponent or some vulnerable, marginalized group in order to, you know, strengthen their power base, or just to get tighter controls on certain institutions, using it as an excuse as to why you have to go after certain social media platforms, or you have to go after X, Y, and Z. As to the idea that he used it as a way to intellectually humiliate people, yeah, he wanted to make his ideas look good and the other people's ideas look silly. You want to find people that you can knock down in order to put on a performance where your side can clap like seals and say, wow, look at that. We're smart, they're stupid. Our point sounded good, their point sounded stupid. We're good, they're bad. That reinforces your position, that digs you deeper into the conservative movement. And maybe by the end of it, not only will you give Charlie Kirk a dime, you'll give the Republican Party and right-wing causes a nickel, which is part of the reason why so many right-wing influencers or, you know, right-wing businessmen with money in their pocket to throw at the Republican Party would throw so much money at Turning Point USA in the first place. As in, you can convince people through debate culture. What Hassan's saying here about 40-40-20 is basically my position. I also know it's the position of most of like the debatosphere on the internet. It is like the standard debatosphere opinion on, you know, when you go into a debate, you're not going to convince everybody on the other side, and you already have all of your people on your side. There's like a certain percentage of people in the middle that maybe you can or cannot convince, as well as been able to make a penny in the process. I can't let fear dictate my life. So Hassan's also talking about in this article how he could be a subject of political assassination or targeting, just like Charlie was, as another reason as to why this was bad, which is true, which is also why you need to be very careful when it comes to, you know, showing like identifiable information or anything that could be used to find a location of people that you know, go after on the internet. Anyway, moving on. AOC also responded. She responded in a similar variation to what Elizabeth Warren had to say, but she probably said it more forcefully, and then added something else, which was a critique of the FBI and their inability to catch the subject, the fact that they're now relying on public support, you know, trying to get the public to come in and help them identify it, and that they've had already, like, you know, 2 suspects. Are we getting anywhere? Are we going to catch the suspect? Here's what AOC had to say. She came out swinging on the steps of the Capitol, talking to CNN's Manu Raju. Hey, thank you for the tier 2 sub, Lewis Highsmith. It used to be that our population would clap back against racism and authoritarianism. Yeah, it also used to be a little bit of different, too. Guess it depends on the decade we live in. Let's hope this will be a good decade.
The president and his speech, he was very critical of left-wing violence. What do you think of that message, and do you agree with them that left-wing violence is a problem?
There is no understanding, as we know publicly, of who this individual is, what their motivations were, where they came from, whether it is a member of Congress, whether it is the President of the United States. To assume and assert and cast blame when the FBI has failed to even apprehend the assailant is absolutely an irresponsible action.
You know, when AOC said this, listening to it the first time, I was like, damn, she's coming out swinging in the fallout of this. She doesn't really care to hold back much. And then the more I thought about it, the more insulted I felt. I did feel insulted. Because what's essentially happening is that before they've even dealt with the threat, I mean, it is still a real possibility. I mean, JD Vance just went to Utah.
Is occurred.
This guy's still on the loose.
NY Post reported the ammo used by the shooter bore pro-trans, anti-gun markings. But hey, it's the NY Post.
That was a report that was based upon, I know this, the preliminary report put out by the ATF that was reported exclusively at first by Steven Crowder, but has then been refuted by the ATF themselves when they said that it was a preliminary report and there was other findings that seemed to not exactly line up with that, and you need to wait and see and not jump to conclusions. Okay, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I think you might have jumped in a little later. Thank you for the €6. Where was I? Oh yes, AOC. The reason that this kind of connected with me, what AOC had to say, is they haven't caught the guy The guy is still at large. For all we know, this assassin is still an active threat. This is somebody who's like, well, you know, I took out Charlie, thought I'd get caught. I didn't get caught. Who's next? Okay. In my scenario, maybe he has lung cancer. Okay. Excuse my cold. But I mean, he's still a threat. He could go out and take out another person. They said they're going to go catch the guy. They said they got to go get the guy. And before they've caught the guy, before they've made clear what they believed, what their motivations were, before they've even neutralized the threat, Donald Trump has gotten in front of it. Donald Trump has skipped the work of actually catching the criminal. Donald Trump has actually skipped the work of actually investigating and making clear what the motive is by catching the guy and having them put out the testimony or having the ATF put out a formal report. None of that has been clarified. None of that has been made clear. He jumped the gun in order to make sure that you classified it as it was the left. It was the enemy. It was them before, number one, you knew it was, and number two, you even caught the guy. Prioritizing getting your narrative about the left and demonizing your political opponents and setting up ammunition to go after them over catching the criminal, over finding out the truth, over not using Charlie's corpse like a cannonball. There were people that were reacting to Charlie Kirk's death with glee. There's been some reposted videos of this. It seems to be particularly young people.